Hello and welcome all. Now, this Silen audio founder, Adam Fligsten, will be with us. He will talk about the finer points to understand game audio as an important tool to communicate to the players, to their players. Now I'm inviting him to join us.
Hello.
Hello, welcome again.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can start when you are ready with the screen sharing.
Okay. Okay. And should I just begin?
Yep, sure.
Okay, great. So I tweaked the talk a little bit. I'm calling it Finding the Perfect Audio for Your Game. So my name is Adam Fligsten. I am the founder of Silen Audio. I am a composer and a sound designer. I also an audio programmer. I've been doing this in the game audio space for over 10 years for AAA games, indie games, kind of everything in between. And recently I started this company with a few really talented audio professionals. We're a full service game audio company. We do music, sound design, implementation, and dialogue services as well. So this is mostly for developers who are making games and they're dealing with different audio challenges. And specifically, this talk is about how to find the right sound, how to get the right overall approach for their game audio. That's what the talk is about. So here is the problem. So often, whether I'm playing a game or I'm working on a game, I see situations where games have a very clear visual direction. But when it comes to audio, it's a little more fuzzy. It's a little less clear. And I've got a lot of theories as to why that is. I think that we, as a people, we're just a very visual. We communicate very visually. You know, we ads and the internet. It's all sort of pictures and all that sort of stuff. And I think that when we're young, you know, we're very good at doing visual art, and we learn sort of some of these techniques. But when it comes to audio-based storytelling, and I'm saying non-verbal audio-based storytelling, I don't think we at an early age develop these tactics and develop these strategies as deeply as I think we could. So so here's the solution. We have to make tough decisions about what our game is and what it sounds like. And when I'm playing games or when I'm working on games that feel a little unclear, it's more often than not, it's that people are sort of trying to not define what their game actually sounds like. They're maybe afraid, you know, to really plant their flag in the sand and say, this is what my game is. This is what it sounds like. So over and over again, I find what I'm calling the safe approach, because people are kind of figuring their game out and they haven't really made the audio decisions that they need to. They try to play it safe, and they kind of try to play all different sides. And the safe approach is basically when a game designer makes easy decisions without really considering what makes their game special. The problem ultimately becomes one of emphasis. Game designers sometimes don't know which audio elements in their games to emphasize, meaning which ones are they really featuring, which ones are they showing to the players, are they making important, and which ones also, on the other hand, are to de-emphasize, which ones to sort of bring down in terms of scope, which ones to make a little less important because they're not helping the overall purpose of the game. Okay, so what we are trying to do, and what every game, in my opinion, should be trying to do, is to find a developed audio approach. Meaning, how do we make these decisions? How do we really decide, okay, this is what my game is about, and this is what it sounds like? And how do we hopefully decide this early? So the question that we're asking ourselves is, what is the best, most perfect audio for this game? What audio could only exist in this game and not in any other game ever anywhere else in the world? That's really the question that we're starting to ask ourselves. So let's look at we're going to talk about what stock assets mean and kind of why they are the way they are. And I think that this is hopefully going to start to get to the idea of what playing it safe is, and maybe why that might not be the right decision for your game. So I found this piece of stock art on the internet. You can see there's nice little cute owls, and they've all got these little expressions, and they've got different colors and stuff like that. Everyone is sort of unique. And then we can compare that to this, which is custom assets. It's probably a game that maybe you all know. It's a game called Among Us. And you can see that they're all pretty much the exact same little character. They don't have that many defining specific features to them, except that they're different colors. So it's a little counterintuitive, because some of the stuff that I'm about to say, because from a technical perspective, you can tell that this artist right here, this is a good artist. They know how to draw. They know how color works. They know how expressions on characters work. They're each one is sort of defined and sort of clear. Like, this is a very good artist. And this, you might be forgiven to think that it's maybe a slightly lesser artist, because the lines are sort of shaky and there aren't as many details and stuff like that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that no, it's kind of the reverse. They might be equally as good of an artist. It's not even about how good or bad they are. It's about the decisions that they're making. So this artist decided to de-emphasize a lot of aspects of their character, whereas this artist didn't really make any decisions. They have a lot of stuff going on. I mean, if I just look at this top picture, sort of my eyes almost glaze over. I don't know what to look at. There's so much visual information just kind of flooding my eyes. And whereas if I look at this down here, the one at the bottom, it's very clear. So what is this game telling us? What is Among Us? For people who don't know, it's a game of little astronauts, and they solve puzzles, and then there's a mystery, kind of one of the astronauts or two of the astronauts are bad, and you have to sort of figure out what it is. So it's purposefully a game that takes place in space. It's got kind of a cartoony vibe to it, and there's a mystery about who is actually in the little suit, and whether they're an imposter or whether they're on your side. So visually, you can actually tell immediately all of that information that I just told you. You can tell that it's in space. You can tell that they're all the same. So you're trying to figure out what's going on. And you can tell that it's got this sort of cartoony, fun vibe to it. They made the decisions of what to emphasize, and then de-emphasized. I would bet that over the course of developing these characters, they probably had a lot more complex, a lot more, these astronauts probably had a lot more features. Maybe some had little backpacks that were different, and some had hats on, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that they decided over the course of making it to de-emphasize certain aspects and to emphasize other ones. Okay. So let's talk about audio. Oh, actually, one more point about stock assets. I think it's important because I keep trying to say that this, just because the custom one works better for this game, that doesn't mean that this is a bad artist. And I think that it's important to think about the stock artist and think about what they were trying to do when they made these little owls. Because the way stock assets work is you go on a website and you pay them, $50 or something like that, and then you get the rights to use that in your game. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to cast a wide net. They want a lot of different types of games to use these assets. So they don't want it to be specific in any one way. They want it to be sort of general. so that, and we could imagine these little owls being used in a puzzle game, or we could imagine them being used in a Angry Birds kind of a game, or adventure. We could imagine a lot of different scenarios where these little owls show up, whereas these ones, like I kind of already said, could only exist in a space cartoony game, nothing else. That's what these are for. Okay, so let's listen to some stock audio versus some custom audio. So I'm going to play a little bit of this. Hopefully the sound is okay. You can let me know if it's too quiet or too loud. I'm going to skip forward a little bit. Okay, now I don't know who made this. I don't know the composer. I'm sure they're a very, very good artist, but they knew what the task was in front of them. They needed to make something that was general. It could be used in a lot of different scenarios. We could imagine this in a puzzle game. We could imagine this in, a kind of an adventure type game. We could imagine it in a whole bunch of different scenarios, and that's kind of the point. Now, do I think it's good? Do I like the music? No. And one of the reasons why I don't think it's very good is because they've shaved off anything that could make it interesting. Any defining aspects. We like uniqueness in our audio. So we like when you hear somebody's personality coming through, or you like when there's something defining. And this composer purposefully sort of got rid of all that and made it as cast a wide net as possible. Okay, let's in comparison, let's listen to this piece from Goat Simulator. I don't know if anybody's ever played this game. It's a cute game where you're a goat and you're smashing into cars and stuff like that, and you're sort of just defining how much destruction you can make, but it's sort of a funny game. It's a humorous game. Let's listen to the theme from that. Okay, I'm going to skip forward a little bit. Okay, one more. Let me just do one more. I'm trying to find a part right here. Okay, so hopefully, I really like this piece. I like it a lot. It's just fun, and hopefully you're starting to get an idea for what I'm talking about. Where the first one that I played, anything that was interesting, they kind of got rid of, and they should have shaved off anything that would define it as a specific piece of music. Whereas the second one, they played the game. They asked themselves some question that we're about to talk about in a second, and then they made some very specific audio decisions. They elevated those, and they made something that's really fun and weird in a very in a very specific way. Sorry, I'm not trying to repeat myself. Okay, let's start asking ourselves some questions. So, if you're making your game, what you should begin asking yourself is, what is this game truly about? And I've worked on a lot of games. Very often, we get into a situation where maybe we've been working on the game for 1 year, 2 years. We're trying to get funding to make our game. We're hiring people, all this sort of business stuff. We're worried about getting it into market and all that kind of stuff. And at some point, I think we don't stop to ask ourselves some of these more fundamental questions. We get so wrapped up in the specifics that we don't sort of take a step back to ask ourselves about this tough stuff. So what is this game truly about? So the first question is literally, what is it about? If it's a goat simulator, it's about a goat smashing into stuff. Just literally what is happening on screen. If it's Angry Birds, it's birds smashing into little towers, and you're playing with sort of physics. If it's Tetris, it's blocks falling. Literally, what are we seeing on screen? Okay. But some people, they stop there and they say, okay, well, it's Angry Birds, so it's about birds smashing into towers. Let's move on, you know. Or it's Among Us. It's about people on a spaceship. Let's move on, and that's it. But we want to go deeper than that. We want to ask ourselves, what is it about emotionally? Okay, so every single game has an emotional arc. I think sometimes when people see this word, they think that it's only about sort of the Last of Us type games, dark, deep stuff about, serious, heavy emotions. But no, every single game has an emotional arc, whether it's Tetris or Among Us. Every single game, it could be just a little short arc where the player gets, excited for a second and then that's it. Or it could be, just I don't know. There's a million different types of emotions, but I think sometimes people don't stop to ask themselves, what are the players feeling right now in this moment when they're in this section? What are they feeling? And you can't predict everything, but you can get pretty close to what you think they're going to be feeling. And also, what is the world? What worlds are we building for our players? And just like with the emotion, every game is building a world. Even the original Tetris, it took place in Russia. We all knew that. And then as Tetris moved on, Tetris Effect, it took place in like a 3D, kind of different reality or different world, different plane. So every single game we are actually sort of building a world for our players, and we want to ask ourselves these questions that go beyond just sort of what is the literal about. Okay, so one of the first steps in every game, at least that I've ever worked on, is you get a piece of concept art. And it's a really important step, I think, for game development, because what you're doing when you're hiring a concept artist is you are beginning to define these questions. And some of these happen without you maybe writing them down literally. Sometimes they're just sort of in your head and you're working with the artist and you're getting something that feels right. But what you're doing is you really are answering these questions for yourself, and then you're going to be sending this to investors or other developers or whatever it might be to teach them about these questions about what the game truly is about. So one of the things that I'm going to encourage all of you to do is not just stop at concept art, but also begin to make concept audio. That's going to be what we're going to be talking about in a second. But first, let's talk about what concept art does and what it means for our game. And we're going to break some stuff down for concept art. And then hopefully we're going to take these ideas and we're going to start to bring them into the audio space. Okay. So I found this a beautiful piece of concept art. Let's just take a second. We can kind of look at it, see if we see anything interesting. And one of the reasons why I chose this piece of concept art is it's very clean. There aren't that many elements to talk about, but even with the simple elements that are there, the more we ask ourselves some of these questions, the more we're going to begin uncovering about what this game is, what this world is, and that's going to inform every decision that we make moving forward. Okay, so the first question that I'm going to ask myself is, what is the location? Now, we don't know exactly what location it is. This could be probably anywhere in the world. There's a lot of countries that have mountains like this, but we know that it's empty. We don't see much proof of civilization. We also don't see many trees or birds or any sort of signs of life or anything like that. So it's sort of an empty, desolate kind of valley, but it also feels very much natural, very of our world. It's also a nice kind of bright day. You can but it's hard to see here, but there's a nice cloud, so it's kind of a nice day in our regular world. Okay, what time period is this? Now, I'm going to go out on a limb with some of these questions. Let's pretend like I was able to confirm some of my suspicions with the developer in this scenario. One of the things that I see right away is I see this character down here, the one at the very bottom. And if you kind of look to see what you're seeing, at least what I see is I see someone wearing a top hat and maybe like a suit. So to me, that sets us in a very specific time. When did people wear top hats regularly? We say maybe like the late 1800s to the early 1900s. So around the turn of the 20th century. That's going to be roughly what I'm going to estimate that. We see nothing else to sort of contradict that. So that's what I'm going to say it is. So what sort of technology existed in this time period? Well, we have trains, we have steam power, we might have some early airplane technology, some early automobile technology, we have ticking watches and stuff like that, maybe even early telephones, but we don't have the internet, we don't have a lot of the more modern technology that we understand today. This is all going to be important. This is going to be really, really important when it comes to the audio, all of these questions. Do we see any elements of supernatural? Yes, absolutely. One half or more of the whole picture is taken up by these big sort of looming cubes, these sort of scary cubes. So we know very clearly that when they made this piece of concept art, that they wanted to create a demarcation, a difference. They wanted to heighten the difference between the regular world and then these big cubes, whatever they are. So this sort of supernatural, we don't know whether it's aliens or something in a different dimension. We don't know exactly what it is. It's a mystery to us, but we know that the difference is very, very important for this game. Who is our protagonist? Now we see two human type people. We don't know for sure what is going on with them. I'm going to guess that this one in the front is probably the protagonist. We see less details about what they are. This one seems a little more clear in terms of what they're wearing, at least to me. So this is kind of a blank slate. The reason why I'm saying that that's probably the protagonist is because in a video game, whoever's in front usually is the player character, and whoever's behind usually is following behind. Just a classic video game model. But it's possible that this other one is the protagonist, but we don't know for sure. What is the journey and what is the gameplay? Again, we don't know for sure, but it looks to me like they are headed towards these cubes. So it looks like they are traveling towards these cubes. So to me, that tells me something very, very specific about what this game is. This game is some sort of a mystery, sort of an exploration game. It's creating a demarcation between the real world and this supernatural world that is represented by the cubes. And we, as the player, we are headed towards the supernatural in order to probably uncover the mystery of some kind. And do we see any other stylistic elements in the concept art? Yes. In my opinion, one thing that's very, very important to this piece of art that we see is it's almost like an impressionistic style. So Impressionism was a style of art in exactly the same time period, similar time period that we're talking about, maybe a little on the earlier side, but the late 1800s, going into the early 1900s. And to me, that's really, really important, because down here on the Earth, this is all very impressionistic. But then if we look up here at the cubes, those are very sharp lines. They're not sketchy lines. So again, that furthers our idea that there's a demarcation, that we're heightening the differences between the surreal world and the regular world. Okay, let's keep, I'm going to sum up some of the findings that we just uncovered in looking at this picture. So our location is kind of an empty valley, not much happening. We don't see too much danger immediately to the player right now in this scene. The time I'm guessing is around the 1910s. We'll say that we'll pretend like the developer confirmed my suspicions in this one. It's a mysterious game. Lots of sort of the uncomfortable difference between what we know to be real in our world and what we see in these cubes. And then those supernatural cubes are a big part of the mystery that we as a player are probably going to be uncovering as we play the game. So if I was making audio for this, now I've got a good feel for it. I'm not going to go general. I'm not going to play it safe. I'm going to start making decisions, and I'm going to be following the decisions that the developer and the concept artist already made for what this game is and what it sounds like. And one of the things that I keep seeing that is very, very important is the contrast between the cubes and then the real world. So one of the goals that I would be doing is really trying to deeply heighten that contrast. We have a sound of the supernatural and we have a sound of the natural, and those are going to be crystal clear in the player's head at every given moment. I'm going to be evoking the time and the place. So if we are in the 1910s, I'm going to probably have some elements for music and instruments that were popular at that time. But I'm also going to probably find a way to evoke this sort of sense of surreal of the cubes, whatever they are. I'm going to try to evoke that as well. Our number one concern in every game, I don't care what game it is what is the player's emotional arc? Every given moment, that's the most important part. That's going to be what we're deciding to emphasize and what we're deciding to de-emphasize. So is the player feeling a sense of mystery right now? Okay, we're going to emphasize mystery. Are they supposed to be scared right now? Okay, we're going to emphasize that. I was recently working on a game that not too dissimilar from this, but it was kind of a mystery, kind of weirder type game. And the sound designer that we were working with had made really good natural noises. So we had nice bird noises, we had nice stream noises, and sort of nature that you could hear the trees swaying in the breeze, that kind of stuff. But the problem is that even though the sound designer did a great job, those are all nice sounds. Those are all pleasant sounds. We all like to go out in nature and we like to hear the sounds of trees and stuff like that. So, but this was a mystery game. So we actually had to de-emphasize, even though the sound designer worked really hard on this stuff, we had to bring it down and we had to bring up other sounds. The footsteps were they sounded a little weird and a little more scary. So we brought up the footsteps. It's like we are choosing to emphasize things based on the player's emotional arc and de-emphasize other things. And we're trying to find the right palette or balance early in development. So now this is what we're going to begin talking about now. The same way that this game found a good balance for its visuals early, that's what we're going to find with our audio. So just to recap a little bit for this game that we were talking about, the first thing from a musical perspective is I'm going to look for contrasting musical styles. I'm going to look for a sense of representing this older time period. So we guessed about the 1910s. So it's hopefully not going to be a joke. It's going to hopefully be more honest and less funny, but we're still going to be pulling from instruments that feel like they're of that time. And then we're also going to try to find a sense of the surreal, We're going to have a sense of these cubes, whatever that might be, and we're going to put them together and see how we can get them to interact with each other in a way that really feels like that picture, the way that those two elements were interacting in that picture. Okay, we're always focused on the player's emotional arc. That's our number one concern. Everything else goes out the window if it's not supporting the player's emotional arc at any given moment. We're going to be prototyping our audio. So the same way that you can sketch out visuals and you can work with your concept artist early and get a whole bunch of different ideas that don't look finished but are in different directions. You can do that with audio. And in my opinion, everybody should be doing that with their audio team early. While you're still learning what this game is, get them to make a minute or 3 minutes of sound. Get them to get some sound design going. Get them to write some music, and you'll be learning what is working. And then you're also going to be throwing away ideas that aren't working. So in my opinion, this stage right here is the most crucial stage. You try a whole bunch. It's like little models. You try this model, you try this model, you try this model, and if it's not working, you get rid of it until you find the one that just feels right. It just captures all of the emotions that are really speaking to your game. So a lot of you probably aren't audio people, and that's great. So if you're working with your audio professional, how do you communicate to them? How do you get them to make the decisions that you want them to make and that you're trying to get them to make? In my opinion, the number one answer is to talk in terms of the story, the characters, and the emotions. Don't worry too much about musical stuff or audio words. And if you really understand this stuff, then you can, and that's okay. But if you're still kind of fuzzy about some of these words, just don't even try. It's okay. We all understand what a story is. We all understand different characters. We all understand moods and emotions. And to me, that's the most important thing that you can center yourself and ground yourself in, far more than any style or music or anything like that. So how do you prototype stuff? So the way I usually prototype audio is I make just very similar to what you all have probably done, where you in games you sometimes make what's called a vertical slice. So it's just sort of a very small section of my game to really kind of make it feel right. Well, I'll do that with just audio and early. So we'll make maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes of music. We'll make some simple sound design. If we've got the budget, we'll even start getting some VO from some of our voice actors. And then if it's a more complex audio system that we need to be making, we'll do some simple programming to kind of get it all working together. And the music and the sound design, we'll sometimes, just like I said, we'll make some prototypes. We'll do 1 minute, a few minutes of many different emotions or many different styles, and we'll present them to the developer and see which one is really sort of working right for everybody. One of the biggest reasons for getting these prototypes early is because later you're not going to have the time to be thinking and worrying about this stuff. You just won't. So we get it right in a small way, so that later when we've got to do a whole bunch of changes really, really fast and everybody's, worried about hitting certain dates and all that kind of stuff, we've already made the decisions. We can trust the us of the past. We can trust the people who made they said, okay, well, they liked it to sound like this, so we're just going to use these decisions now over here. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. We already made these decisions. We're just going to use them now. That's one of the reasons why prototyping is so important. So the goal is to find the right elements to emphasize. That's always the right goal, because you can't do everything. And you don't want to play it safe. You want to make the right decisions, not just the easy decisions. So does this need to cost money? No, it doesn't. It really doesn't, because what we're just talking about is we're talking about decision making, and decision making is free. So sometimes it can take some time. If we're making a lot of little prototypes, sometimes it can take a few weeks. We make this, try it, try this, try this. So so time is something that I think is important, and that's why I encourage you to get these approaches early in your game development process, so you can get really confident with what your audio prototypes are, and you can pull them into the rest of the game. But I've played many games, I've worked on many games that don't have that much money, indie games, but they took the time to ask themselves all of these questions about what it is that they're actually making. And then the flip side is I've also worked on AAA games and played some AAA games where they never made the decision about what's the most important emotion or what's the most important aspects of their game, and they never made the decision of what to emphasize and what to de-emphasize, and in the result it just sounds kind of messy. So it's not really about money, it's just about making the right call. So I'm going to go fast. I had a lot more planned, but I'm going to go kind of fast through this because we're getting close on style. Or I'm sorry, we're getting close on time. So I'll just play two really quick cases that I've been working on recently. So the first one is a forest kind of adventure game that we played, and when we were making the music, we were really trying to emphasize this sort of beautiful, almost childlike, wondrous sort of world. So I'll play about 30 seconds of this because I'm running out slow on time. It goes a lot of different other places. For the record, this is still in the prototyping stage, so we're still figuring out some ideas in terms of getting the right musical tone and all that kind of stuff. This is not a final product. And I also probably shouldn't be playing people this, but because it's early in the process. But you know what, I think it's interesting to see how it actually works. Here's another game. This one's a little older. This one took place in a Soviet spacecraft. So we were really trying to get this feel, and it was also in the early 80s, so it was a really time and place that we were trying to capture. We used original Soviet synthesizers. They're actually right behind me. For a lot of the sound design we used for the knobs and the sound of the dials and stuff like that, for the sound design we used, and then of course for the music we used that as well. I'll play just about 30 seconds for that, and then we're going to transition over to the Q&A. So hopefully you're starting to get an idea for how this approach can, my goal in playing those two is that this same approach can make radically different results, because you're following the game. You're not making decisions about what music you like to listen to when you're at home or driving in your car. You're following the game, you're asking yourself tough questions, and you're winding up in much different places in the world in terms of what this stuff sounds like. And that is the developed approach, rather than just playing it safe, finding somewhere in the middle that doesn't work for either scenario. That's kind of the point. So I think now we're going to open it to questions. I'm not sure exactly how this works. Should I unshare my screen, or?
You can stop sharing your screen, but we currently don't have any questions open on the Q&A menu. So if you want to add anything, you can.
Sure. So I have so I'll kind of go through some of the other I kind of let me just I have some other pieces of concept art from the same artist who I like a lot, and I'll go a little more rapid fire through some of the audio scenarios that we would be asking ourselves if we were looking at this concept art for different types of games. So so here is a piece of concept art, and every single time we look at something like this, we're asking ourselves, you know, every one of these decisions was intentional. They didn't make them accidentally. So what is this telling us? Well, we see kind of a messy bed. We see no sign of modern technology. We see sort of a older radiator. So maybe this is in the 1950s or 1960s. See some books. So it's really immediately telling us what time period we're in. No computers or anything like that. Of course, we see a murder. Somebody's murdered. We know it's going to be a mystery. We're going to be uncovering what it is. And we already sort of get a sense for who lives here and what their personality is. What do they value? They value books. And that's pretty much it. Nothing else. No other. Everything else is sort of sparse. Let me just see if there's any other important things. So from an audio perspective, we're just, you know, one of the things about this is, and one of the things maybe I didn't mention is people know what different genres sound like. So we are going to be paying attention to their expectations. So for something like this, it very clearly looks like a 1950s mystery or a 1960s mystery. So we're going to be aware of that. And maybe we're going to go in that direction of what does a 1950s or 1960s mystery movie sound like or feel like, but maybe we'll do the reverse. Maybe we'll play against it and we won't do that, you know, depending on the thing. But we're always going to be really aware of what people's expectations are when it comes to certain genres and when it comes to certain types of stories as well. Is there a question or?
Yeah, we have one question. Osman asks, how do you program the change of music in games with the interactions? How do you do that?
So every game is a little bit different. Let me just see. So from a technical perspective, we usually use a program called either Wise or Fmod. There's sometimes we use the built-in Unity or Unreal Engine, the audio engine, and actually Unreal just came out with a brand new, or it's still in beta, it's a brand new thing called Meta Sounds, which I'm pretty excited about because I think it's gonna change the way we do a lot of audio in a good way. So that's what we do technically, and what we do is we set up the changes. So there's two basic styles. It's hard to do it very, very quickly, but we have what I call a railroad technique, which means that it's a whole bunch of different sounds that are all linked together. This is almost like you can imagine a DJ at a club just sort of transitioning between different cues. And then we also have what I call a horizontal technique. So this is the same. It's almost like different audio files that are stacked on top of each other, and we are cross-fading between them. I'm sorry, vertical. This is vertical. Maybe I said horizontal. And depending on the game, we do one of the two, or sometimes we transition between the two. So either we're switching between different cues, or we're fading up audio that was already playing but just wasn't being heard. Those are the two basic techniques that we often do. Hopefully that answers the question. Any other question? Or that's pretty much it. Okay.
I guess that's it. If you want to add anything else, we have still 4 minutes left for your time.
So 4 minutes. So I mean, I could do another quick piece of concept art because I do have another one.
Sure.
Yeah, let's do one more. because I think that, the goal with everything that I'm talking about is that it doesn't matter what game you're working with, and it doesn't matter what style. It's always going to be the same process. So this one is very clearly the number one emphasis in this is the nature. You can tell right away. It takes up about 80% of the whole thing. It's just this sense of growth, this sense of life, this sense of nature. So that's our number one audio approach, is emphasizing nature. The other thing is, you can tell you don't see anything supernatural. You don't see anything that couldn't exist in our world, but sort of the way the player is dressed and just kind of the pictures. I can imagine that there's probably a high level of supernatural. There's some sort of magic probably in this world. So we're going to be probably emphasizing that as well. But getting the right sound for magic in a game takes some time, because different magic sounds different in different capacities in different worlds. And even though it looks beautiful, the player is going towards the light, which is usually a positive sign. It usually means that the player is looking for something and is going to find something positive at the end. You can also get a sense that right now they're sort of in a darker sense. So the world right now, there's some danger in the world right now. So we would be, even though it's beautiful, we're going to be emphasizing some bit of this subtle danger. Okay. Is there another question? Oh yeah. Okay. There's an English.
Yes, we have one. What would be average price for a 5-hour gameplay if we consider to outsource it, both music and environment base?
So I can't really give you an average price. You would need to contact me directly about that. Some games you don't need to do that much work because of the nature of the gameplay. Some games you need to really do a lot of heavy lifting for different games. So without, I can't really give an average price without playing your game. But please, contact us. You can go on the website. There's a contact form. I'd love to. I love hearing about what games people are working on. Even if you just have some questions about your game and you're not looking to hire us, but you just want to have some questions, please contact us. We are always excited to hear what people are working
on. We are out of time. Thanks a lot, Adam, for joining, for sharing your experience with us.
Sure, thank you.
We can move on to closing speech. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.